Actually, before we get started, Michael, we've had 3 of our 4 senior elders up here. And Don and Aaron have been, Don wasn't up here, but he's the 4th. Don and Aaron have been with me for 52 years. And Jay,
I'm the newcomer.
48, I think. And Bob?
Can I remember his name?
Yeah,
it's a real tough one. B.O.B., Bob.
Yeah, usually I can't remember people's names until they've been here for 50 years. That's the problem. But the other thing in the serving, there were all kinds of 3 generations serving, together in this process. And that's part of rooting this in a way that makes a difference intergenerationally. But what I was really up to was to have Jay stand back up again and look at his tie. And let me tell you a story. Half of Jay's career, he was a very popular high school teacher. The other half, he's at the university and NASA. But they established a practice that if the kids in high school would bring him a tie, no matter how ugly it was, he would wear it all day. And my guess is, what's that?
I never got an ugly one.
Oh, shit. Jay doesn't know the difference between ugly and non-ugly on ties. That's the problem. But that's,
Are you suggesting that was maybe an ugly tie?
Somebody gave you that one. I hope you didn't buy it.
You could buy ties?
So, what a meal. My goodness. What a meal.
What are we clapping about?
That was solid meat. That's a Hebrews meal. That's solid meat right there. So we want to take just a short time here before I talk about rooting to just give from our perspective about why this paradigm has made progress in the last year of rooting. So you can put it up here. So Jeff, this is a picture of the civilizations, and it's amazing that God has given us open doors across here. When really it started with Keith and Carol and you and the rest of the church in the 80s of going just into northern India there. But why is this map encouraging to us in this last year?
Well, our broad strategy in Huntington's work on the
Class of
Civilizations, after the 1989, he did a phenomenal article saying the world's dividing into 9 civilizations. And we took that seriously and built our broad strategy, grand strategy we call it, across those 9 civilizations. But at the core of that, obviously, are church networks. So God, first of all, God has given us, we've been invited into networks of churches all over the world in all 9 civilizations. And so now we're in a situation where there are enough partners in several of the civilizations that we're actually able to strategize across the entire civilization. And so that's, I'll mention that in relation to just a brief story on Ali and the Muslim world, and show you a little bit about China. But in several places now, there are enough networks that we can really begin strategizing in how to affect the church in that civilization, which is the next step towards shaping the next Christendom across the global south.
And this is important for all of you, all of us, because wherever God has placed you, you're part of something bigger. You're always part of something bigger. And our roots are all connected. So just having this visual in your mind, you're part of that civilization. These celebrations we do in each civilization, you're part of something bigger. Of course, we want to talk about at a global scale, but also at a civilization level, you're part of it. This next slide is China. And Jeff, talk to us about these spheres and why we are so encouraged by green and red spheres.
Yes, we felt for a long time that ultimately the house church movements of China would move fastest in the paradigm because they're the closest to Acts, with Mao having thrown out all the missionaries and all the Western systems.
In 49.
And
Yep.
what's that?
Yeah.
And we had a choice. In 204, we really went after the large-scale movements in India. And then God really opened the door in 214 to move into the five families and the large house church movements in China. So we've been cultivating those for 10 years, going in and out of China, doing lots of Zooms. And now we've seen the shape take place enough that we're moving to a second phase in China. And each of these spheres, Paul has a concept in 2 Corinthians 10 where he said he's been given a sphere, he's been given a field. And that field of churches allows him to be able to expand that field to cities beyond if the networks that he's building is strong. Well, we've taken that sphere idea, and now there's 38 networks, house church networks in China, representing probably 60 or more % of all of the house church movements. And so there are house church networks in all of these spheres. The green is our first bunch that are making a commitment. We'll tell you in that third slide what that commitment is. And then the red ones, so that these will all be green by the end of 2026. And so they represent, there's 38 networks spread amongst them, and we're asking each of those networks now that they've worked with the resources, if they want to make a commitment that they're going to build the way of Christ and the apostles with our entire system. And so Renton and I have now visited 8 of those 38, and all 8 have said, and they're some of the biggest, have said they're willing to, or they want to, they're committed to working with us and building the way of Christ and the apostles with our entire system over the next decade. And we'll talk briefly about the 2 phases of those in a moment. And the bigger circle represents that in the western part of China, there's about 430 unreached people groups. And most of these networks have people they've sent into those networks. So as their networks are established, we're in a much better alignment with the way of Christ and the apostles, and a practical alignment of being able to have networks of churches in a culture reach their own unreached people groups. And that's the same pattern we see worldwide. But so, and direct answer to your question, the kind of the new sphere we're moving into is and even it's happening in other civilizations, we now have enough strong networks to begin strategizing across the civilization.
The next territory, the next civilization, although it doesn't map precisely to a civilization, is, boy, I hate this map. The resolution is terrible, but go with the concept here. Is the Muslim world. MENA, Middle East, North Africa as it's known, but yet also the Muslim territories here. Why are we encouraged about this open door?
Yeah, we won't go into the details of the numbers right now, but actually those are leaders that are in training in this whole process that lead networks. We first met Ali in 2009, and he had established a ministry called Channel North Africa and a major satellite system. So he built evangelism and programs into the MENA countries, Middle East, North Africa, of which there are 14 countries. And he'd done that for a decade, and they set up a follow-up system. You know, just like if you become a believer and you can go to this place and get booklets and so on. But he knew that it needed to be developed a lot more than that because he was having a big impact and even beginning to affect some government people. So someone introduced, Scott Smith introduced me to him, and him to us in 2009. And just within one conversation, the strategy unfolded because as we looked across the MENA countries, which are North Africa and the Middle East, not the Stans and the Indonesia area, the plan was then to go ahead and turn those little those centers that people would come to into hubs for networks, for church networks. And the league grasped that idea, and we worked for a decade on the other side of that, building those networks. And mostly the focus was one half of the Muslim world, which are the Middle East, North Africa countries. But the remarkable thing is that the other half, like global Pentecostalism and across the global south, the other half of the Muslim world there was spontaneous expansion happening in what's called MBBs, Muslim background believers. Sometimes these would be thousands and thousands of churches spread across the Stans up there, down in Indonesia, and some in India. Well, actually, MMBs are across the lower part, especially the lower part of the MENA countries, because the Muslims go down and touch the upper half of sub-Saharan Africa as well. And so with these MMBs, how are we going to reach them? Because they're fairly uneducated, but they're completely uncorrupted by the West system. And God, through a number of circumstances, opened up a handful of key people that are committed to that. And once they saw Ali's teams that were being built, especially in Nigeria, but leaders coming together from those 7 North African countries, they said they had never seen that, and this is what the MBBs need. And so now there's 2 great spheres, and so Ali, together with his strategy and center, there's such a story behind all this, but now we strategize with Lee and his core team. They have a center in Set, which is absolutely beautiful down on the Mediterranean in France, that we work with them each year on now. But now this strategy that's laid out, eventually the Reds will be the very heart of the Muslim world. But you can see he's coming down and over. Indonesia's opened up, and all the Stans countries. And so that's the complete map of the Muslim world. And that means that between those 2 avenues, the MENA, all under the satellite, and the MMBs, we have a 2-pronged strategy that goes right to, again, a significant enough majority in the Muslim world that in the next 10 years, and we'll show you the commitments we're calling them to, in the next 10 years, we're going to see China, we're going to see India, we're going to see that's part of the Muslim world, and we're going to see these 15 countries down in East African community and Southern Africa all begin developing large-scale network commitments together that will affect their civilization. If you go back to China, Michael's we're both focused, all of our team is focused on all of this, but Michael's focus has been scaling such a large scale of India, of really getting that thing on the other side of COVID to scale, getting a whole number of network leaders through their training, getting their degrees and their certificates, and now setting up the system where they go from the top leaders on down through their networks in as far as the training material is concerned. My main focus has been for the decade in and out of China, but we've got enough response now in China with 38 networks that are the core, and many of these have, just like India, have a whole bunch of small networks under them, but 38 across them. And now the issue is we want to challenge them to go a lot further than just using our materials and improving their networks with the materials, because they've all, with the encyclicals, the training, the cultivation, now's the time to make a commitment of are they going to go 100% in on the paradigm and partner with us and our entire system. And so what we did was we gave them a choice. They can keep using all the resources and so on, but we're really looking for networks that are so serious about this that they will make a comprehensive commitment implementing the entire TWA system. Phase 1 is to deeply establish their network, the core solid apostolic team, senior elders in strategic hubs, grassroots first principles everywhere. And building a benefactor, oh good, you got it, and inaugurating the gathering. Because the gathering is the thing that we have to break. The Western institutional Sunday morning, we have to break. If we want spontaneous expansion, we have to get at the heart of the gathering. And that thing has to change and work out from there. But so the idea is 5 years, get that in place, make sure they know our whole system in the early part of the 2 years, and then the second 5 years, expect their networks to double. And spontaneous expansion will start before that. We know how this pattern works, but we think that by the time we get into that next 5 years, and my cardiologist, I told him this was the last stint he's putting in over until the next decade is done. And he gave me great assurance, my Bangkok cardiologist, he gave me great assurance that he's fixed me up enough that I'm going to be able to work with Michael in seeing this unfold. That's enough, right?
Mm-hmm. Any questions? No. All right.
So you want me to go sit down?
I think so.
Okay.
You have a question? That's a pretty tie? I don't know. I've decided to do something simple. So I've altered what I was going to talk about. I'm going to talk about a picture, one picture, and that's really, what do we mean, and maybe in particular, what do I mean when I use the word rooted? Rooting the paradigm. What do I actually mean? So I'm just going to take these slides. That's all I'm after. Just to peel back a few layers up here and to explain what we envision when we say rooted. So, as you all know, the Old and New Testament were agrarian cultures. They cultivated the land for crops and for livestock. Pretty basic stuff. You can see all these crops, by the way, in the text. And something you also already know, it's pretty obvious, but I'm also a farmer. And I didn't get to choose when I was born. I didn't get to choose who I was born to. I didn't get to choose any of it, really. You just get placed and born into this world. And I happen to be born into a farming family. And for many different reasons, we've chosen to continue to be a farmer. For reasons of create funding for this global work, to have the rewarding challenges of the hard work, to opportunities to be with my father, my dad, and my sons. The picture on the right here is myself, my father, Abram, my second son, and Elijah there on the end, my oldest son. You can tell we all have the same genes. We're all about exactly the same height in that picture. I didn't notice that until now. And this is at a dealership that sells equipment for agriculture. And so most of you in the room, except for 3 or 4 of you, know exactly what I'm standing in front of. But the rest of you, this is a head that harvests, that goes on this particular machine right there. That's a combine, and those are combines over there in the background. But this is a head that gets put on there. We had just purchased it, and actually from the guy right over here, Carl. And this is his dealership, or was anyway. And so it's an opportunity to work hard with your family and with your father and with your sons, but also to be like Paul. As I've grown and realized the benefits of being bivocational, these things are important to us. And so I say we intentionally because it's been a hermeneutical process to go through as a family, as my wife and I, as our parents, but all of our parents here, all of my parents and all of our family here. I wanted to also show this because the Spirit's been at work early in our lives, and it seems like I'm giving Jim and Carl quite the shout out tonight. Unintentionally, if you weren't here, I was going to show this stuff anyway. But Carl's older brother, my first year, my second attempt at college anyway, we'll call it my first year, which is a bit of a fib, because it was my second semester. My first semester, I didn't make it through. But the first semester I did make it through, I went to, and I had this guy right over here, Carl's older brother, his name is Jim. Actually, I was just reading your book. I never knew your actual name was James. But you never use that name, do you? No. Okay, don't call him that. Call him Jim. But when I took his class, I just want to show these pictures. I found these about maybe a year ago, but I want to show you how the Spirit was at work early on. You tell me if you recognize my notes. Paradigms are patterns, models. This is 1997. These are my notes I found when we were moving out of Des Moines. Do change makes for new fundamentals. You need to be a pioneer. You need to be a high risk taker. They recognize success. Be a pioneer paradigm. Switch it around. Be a paradigm pioneer. Paradigm pioneers have big ideas. They have an intuition, courage to take movement. They have intuition, ability to make good decisions without complete information. Wow. They are in it for the long haul. It takes time. There's no clear or easy road. There's benefits and risk. And if this doesn't tell you what year this was a paradigm tape, a VHS tape, evidently, Jim. Paradigm tape. I'm a great note taker, by the way. Aren't these great notes? That's a great heading in notes. Paradigm tape. Have an open mind. Get outside your borders. I spelled borders wrong. Break rules of old success. Develop new reading habits. Be ready for, that's the word, failure. Be ready for failure, and then keep moving. Listen, and listen. Bring paradigm change to reality. Vision tape. Want to make a difference. Think about it. Dream about it. Vision the future. Vision is a dream in action. Vision about the future. Vision with action. Those are the notes that I took when I was 19. And you look back on those, and they're just so significant to what we're doing today. So, what do I mean by rooted? I drew a little picture, as you might. I love these pictures. And I'm basically just trying to show you in my own mind what we mean, but what I mean in particular by rooted. And so on the top here, I have 6 phases to farming. One of you, thank you, Luke, you said, hey, I'm really looking forward to listening to you talk, but just, don't say anything about agriculture. This whole thing is about agriculture. This whole thing's about, you were joking, I know, but six stages here, and then I have 5 to relate it. So the first step in agriculture is it begins with a mindset. It begins with a mindset. Do you think we can harvest a record amount of crop this year before we've even started? Now, we've probably thought of 12 ways that the weather's going to kill us and the markets are going to kill us and we're going to have 3 tornadoes. But can we work hard to accomplish the work and let's put forth everything we have? You kind of get yourself ready. Let's focus on the things we can control. This is a picture up in the top right. You do some not S-curve work, but bell-shaped curve work and statistic work on the previous years. You do an assessment there. These are block boxes where we do statistics. This is from this fall. And these are pictures I like to take as you're waking up early in the morning, watching the sunrise. It begins with a mindset and hard work. This next stage of farming and building roots and harvesting a good crop is you plant the seed with extreme care. You plant with absolute extreme care, and you pay attention to all the details of planting. So this is a picture here. Right here is a seed. That is a very, very small seed. You make sure you have the exact depth. We'll say 2.5 inches. This is a soybean, so there's 3 of you in here that would criticize that. But soybean and then the wrong inches depth. But for the rest of you, you don't know the difference. So we'll just say that's a corn seed. And you need to plant them 2.5 inches deep, 30 inches apart. This is a row right here, and this row is exactly 30 inches from this. And the seeds in this row, exactly the depth of 2.5, and they're exactly 6 inches apart. All the way down, there's 30,000 of these, 36,000 of these every acre. And you're planting thousands of acre, and you want every single one to matter. Every single one's got to matter. And so you're constantly checking these things. You're constantly checking the depth. You're constantly checking the furrow or the track, and you're constantly, not as constant, but checking the temperature. So you plant with extreme care. The next step, the third step, is really you consistently get rid of weeds. There's really 3 stages of getting rid of weeds. The first step is you have weed prevention. The third step is some weeds get past the early weed prevention and you get rid of the smaller weeds. And even some weeds you miss then, and you have bigger weeds you have to get rid of in the third stage of getting rid of weeds. It's a constant problem. And we always curse Adam and curse the Genesis text that says you're going to struggle with the cultivation of land until Christ returns. These are pictures that just make us angry. This is a water hemp in the top right corner that has tried to die. We tried to kill it, and it is slowly coming back to life. And those you honestly can't kill a second time. And then they seed, and they have adapted, and so you won't be able to kill them next year. And they seed a couple thousands or a couple million seeds, and you're constantly getting rid of weeds. The next step in farming is you scout for insects and fungus. You rigorously care for and assess the growing crop. So from that seed, this is what it begins to look like. And you can see in the top here, this is a very tall father who's waving as he's assessing and growing the crop. We're looking at leaves there. You look at the fungus and tar and the spots on there. You monitor it weekly. You scout for insects and fungus, and you schedule all the work around the weather. Everything's dictated by if it's going to rain, if the sun's going to shine, if it's going to be cloudy, if it's going to be windy. What temperature is it? Is it above 50? Is it below 90? Is it above 90? And all those details matter when you're scouting the crop. Then comes harvest. You begin to harvest the crop. Now, this seed has gotten pretty big. My father is standing right there. My father is 6'4". This crop is about twice as tall as him. That's a big crop. Pretty small seed to start to grow that big, but you have to, when you harvest it, you're intentionally harvesting every kernel possible. You're paying attention, you're adjusting for the weather, you want it at the right moisture, you maintain your machines, you monitor grain quality and loss daily, you manage everything that you can. This bottom right is a picture of us actually harvesting. That machine that we were standing in front of in the other picture goes into this corn here, this field where my father is standing, and then it takes the kernels off the cob, and then we dump it in wagons, and that's what harvest is about. So I actually have a little video here for you. This is what it looks like. For those of you that have never seen this before, this is what, of course I'm got to show you what the yield is up there. But that's what it looks like coming out. So this is harvest time on the farm. And the last thing is we don't boast beyond our own field. We don't boast beyond our own field. We don't boast about other people's fields. And you do a little boasting about your own field, and some years you do a little more boasting, depending on how it went. And sometimes the fish is this big, or the fish was this big. Sometimes the yields are this big, and sometimes they're this big. But you don't boast beyond your own field. It's a pretty common thing in agriculture, which is very relevant to 2 Corinthians 10. But these are actually pictures of our fields. So once we're done harvesting, you begin to assess again for the next year. And this is corn on the right and soybeans on the left. And you can see the legend that shows you what number they were as far as the quality or the quantity that was harvested. And so this is, you don't boast beyond your own field. So this is important because as you compare it to the faith and what we're doing, we are intentionally planting seeds as we raise our third gen and even fourth gen. We've got to plant it at the right depth. We've got to have on-the-job development. We have to have parents who help our children contend for the faith. We have to not only receive and believe, but be able to discern the difference between Christendom and the way of Christ and his apostles. And we have to build warriors that can contend for the faith. Those of you that read the parenting paper know what I'm talking about. We have to have lifelong learning habits, church that's a family, discussing our lives and text together, and that gets the weeds out of our lives that constantly grow up at every single different stage. We have to have leaders who care and shepherd the churches. They have to always be scouting, spurring each other on, provoking each other, and assessing our networks, assessing our leaders and one anothering throughout all the process. We have to have we don't have to, I suppose, but we want a big harvest, yes? We want to be multiplying churches all the time. We want to increase the harvest, strong churches, strong networks, solving cultural and social problems, churches that seek the welfare of our cities. And we don't boast beyond our own field. We are stewarding in our field. We want to see this pattern, this paradigm to the world. And it's tempting to always compare to other fields and compare to other things, but our success is measured by our faithfulness to the paradigm. So we don't boast beyond our own field. But what particular aspect have I left out? I've really left one fundamental, huge aspect out of agriculture and of what I mean by rooted. The soil, where the roots grow. Soil is where everything begins, and it's where the roots live. And we are not making any more of it. We start with dust, and we all return to dust. Everything returns to dust at some level. Healthy soil in agriculture is the formation of all crops and livestock. And healthy soil is actually composed of a complex environment of nutrients and air. Healthy soil is 50% air. The difference between healthy soil and a brick is only one thing. Brick has hardly any air in it. You've just squeezed all the air out of it, and so it has no pliability. But a healthy soil has a complex environment of all these different things. But what is comparable or equivalent to soil and roots in our faith? Our minds. Our mind is really the equivalent of soil in agriculture and roots. But even more than that, it's really the collection of all of our minds is really what makes up those roots and the soil. And even more so, what is go back to that paper of those notes, what is a collection of all of our minds together? And when we believe in a set of patterns and all of our minds are doing that, that's a paradigm. That's a paradigm. So, when a group of minds that believe in a set of patterns, that's a paradigm, have those sets of roots, what kind of harvest do we get? You can read those. You've seen us talk about this a lot. None of this is new. But you get something that's quite expensive and not very scalable. That's a fundamental. When those roots are growing in this way, when it's rooted this this is the harvest you have. And when we're rooting ourselves in the way of Christ and his apostles and his patterns that you see in the New Testament, we have churches that gather and meet and function socially as families. And you can do that anywhere, at any time, and it's very scalable all around the world until Christ returns. That's his plan. That's his pattern. That's his paradigm that he was introducing when he was alive, and then gave the clear plan to his apostles as he said, wait for the Spirit, and I will tell you what to do. So we call that, of course, the way of Christ and his apostles. When I think of rooted in the way of Christ and his apostles, that's what we're producing, and all those steps along the way is what we're doing. And this quote from David Bosch is just so amazing. There's a growing awareness that we live in an era of change from one way of understanding reality to another. Macro paradigms go through a period of fundamental change every 300 to 500 years. It's abundantly clear that the 20th century shows evidence of such a major shift in perceiving reality. Since the 17th century, the Enlightenment paradigm has reigned supreme in all disciplines, including theology. Today, there is a growing sense of dissatisfaction with the Enlightenment and a quest for a new approach to understanding our own reality. There is, on the one hand, a search for this new paradigm, and on the other hand, such a new paradigm is already presenting itself. We've talked about how it's important for us to root it, this emerging paradigm, in the way of Christ and his apostles. We obviously mean, when we say rooted, the Colossians 2 basic verse of 2:6-8. As you therefore have received Christ Jesus the Lord, continue to live your lives in him, rooted, built up, and established in the faith, just as you were taught, abounding in thanksgiving. Paul was passing on that tradition. We've talked about this quite a bit this week, but that tradition was from Christ and the other apostles, and it's those roots from this tradition that we're passing on. Chadwick, can you hand me that piece of paper? I want to pause just a moment here. And we've had over almost 1,500 leaders since the last conference that have crossed thresholds of certificates, degrees, master craftsmen, bachelor's, certificates, masters, doctorates. I'm not going to read 1,500 names, but I am going to read those of you that are here, because these are leaders of leaders. So why don't you stand up, and we're going to recognize you as you've been rooting the way of Christ and his apostles. So Simon Sudir and Isaac Abel and Luis Rolando, and Kathleen. Are you still here, Kathleen? Right there, Kathleen has finished the C-Min and the M-Min. Florian from Kosovo has finished the C-Min. Fiznik, you're from Kosovo as well, with the masters. The rest of these are all masters. George Chirian right here, Rodney Morris, Luke Thompson, Serge from French-speaking area, David, Joseph from Uganda, Babu Rao, Suresh, Phyllis, and lastly, Thinagran. So could we, Thinagran, have a stand? Could we recognize all their hard work? Just a handful more things, and then we're going to have Don come up and pray for us. Every generation has to grow its own roots. What set of paradigm roots will you grow in your own life, your church's lives, and the network of churches of which you are the leader? The crop harvested will depend on your roots. Grow them in the way of Christ and his apostles. But we've got to grow our roots with preciseness and assessment and leadership at every step, you sacrifice one particular step in any of this process, and it alters the outcome significantly. And we have to do everything with care. And I think the assessment that we've gone through this particular week is really a culmination of 50 years up to this point. Couldn't have written it 10 years ago, couldn't have written it 20 years ago, and couldn't have written it 50 years ago. Lastly, this is my last slide. This year has been unique. That's obvious. This year has been particularly a struggle because as we continue to make progress, I think the conflicts without and the fears within continue to build, and you're hard pressed on every side. And certainly with Leah being hurt here recently, I think I said to Jeff and to Jay a week and a half ago, I said, I don't, or 2 weeks ago maybe, I don't think I can do the conference. I don't think I can do it. There are many times in my own life where I'm perplexed, in despair, struck down, like a jar of clay cracked throughout, hard pressed on every side, but not forsaken, carrying around in me the death of Christ, wondering, and you have this especially when you're traveling, and how did I get here? Is this my life? This is a poem of lament. The last paragraph will turn the other way. How did I get here? Is this my life? Did I choose this pathway, or was this pathway chosen for us? How can you send a mere farm boy to the ends of the earth to declare that we must return to your traditions? Who are we to say such a thing? The way? But then I look my eyes to your field. Don, you can make your way up here. Don's going to save me from the rest of this. Then I look my eyes to your field, and I look at the work before us, and we will give the work every breath we have. For the death of Christ lives in me, so that his life may be made visible in all of us. Further up and further into the world we must go until the way of Christ and his apostles is rooted and producing a bountiful harvest that replicates for generations and generations to come. That's our prayer, and that's what we mean by rooted. That's what we mean by rooted. Don?
In Psalm 8, the psalmist said, "O Jehovah, our Lord, how great is thy name." And Father, we consider it a privilege to bow before you tonight and call you our Lord. We thank you and praise you for this time that we've had to celebrate what you've done and to see what you've accomplished around the world. And we would pray with the Apostle Paul, the Ephesians prayer, "For this reason I bend my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name, that he would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in the inner self, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, and that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the width and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ which surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly beyond all that we ask or think, according to the power that works within us, to him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus to all generations forever and ever. Amen.
All right. This is it. We're closing up the celebration here. And I think we have the band come up and start getting ready. And I've got some thank yous that we want to talk about as this is an undertaking, but a very fruitful and amazing undertaking to be a part of and to do this. And so I just want to recognize some folks that have helped make this thing go. And when we talk about getting things done, there are just moments where we just have to say it's going to get done. And so this is how it does that very thing. We had an amazing transportation team that brought a lot of you internationals in from the airport. Mark Stevenson, who ran our van, our build shuttle all week. And the volunteers that have helped out, Daniel and Sarah and Brian and Jay, who's making a run at 2:45, and others that ran at that early. And Mark and Daniel and Colin and David. And Todd Roush is going to help out tomorrow when I'm not going to be here, so he'll be here to help get you guys back home. Our amazing hosts who have opened their homes to you and hopefully made it a little bit like home while you're away. 10, 14 days is a long time to be away from home, and to have a little bit of a family who's going to love on you a bit, that is going to feed you and take care of you and house you is an amazing thing. And so thank you to our hosts that take care of that with us. The team that has kept this building clean all day long, and after we've left and made it look presentable again the next day, we think of Taylor and her team of folks that have been doing it, the churches that have volunteered in the evenings to come in and clean, and when there's been a gap in that thing, the people who I've watched jump in and take care of it is an amazing gift to have a clean and rotated place. Every time we come in, it seems like it's all new again. Our families who provided snacks and help around lunch, and for all those times when you guys got done with the session and came out and everything was ready for you to go, and when you came back in and when you went back out it was all gone, all of those people that presented it and got it ready to go and put it all together, those people have been working very hard over the last week or so. So please give them a bit of a round of applause as well. Build team who's done room setups and materials and errands and questions, Martha and Nancy and Kathy and Lillian and Pam and Josh and Annie and Tina and Don and David and Caroline and Nathan and Randy and Mike with the AV team and Jim helping out tonight and everybody who's done anything, and Anna for doing the artwork and Gabe with the band and everything tonight as well. Thank you guys for everything you guys have done. Bring these guys out. Build coaches who put in extra effort, and those that are doing residencies, Steve and Bill and Steve Gallagher and Randy, and I think that's everybody there. And then why don't you guys come on in, bring in the folks. Last but not least, these people who have served you this evening, who have fed you this evening, who have made sure your drinks have not ran out, your plates are there. This is intergenerational. Have you seen the young ones come in and do this? Just like was mentioned, this is fourth generation in some instances, as I've seen whole families. David Cook and Charles Cook back there, and Neva, Michelle Cook, families that are all together, gathered together, all those people that kind of do that. It's an amazing thing. So, thank you guys so much for the effort and the work of cooking all day long, volunteering most of the day, and being here to put on a spectacular meal this evening. All right, thank you guys. Thank you for all that. All right, This is it. This is our last song. This is the celebration. Many of you are leaving. Some of you are sticking around to do some work for the next couple of days and some residency. But we are glad you were here. We are glad that we got the opportunity to spend time with you. We are glad that we are partners. We are glad that we're moving towards a future where we are rooting the way of Christ and his apostles in your context, in the world, and wherever we're going. So thank you for being here.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, just sit down, but I'm going to have to stand back up again because we're going to have this thing right. All right? Yeah. All right. So sing it out, sing it loud. Where's my Menden crew? Where's my Mendonites? There's Ethan, yeah. I want to hear you on these echoes here. You know what's coming up. And in this night with The Way of Christ and His Apostles, this is a song I wrote that quickly summarizes each encyclical that's out there, and hopefully this gives a nice ending to our night, a picture and reminder, renewing our minds with these little summaries and stuff. So let's sing it out. Paul's letters establish the church. Christ's example inaugurated his work. They give it simple, gathering each week. That's the secret to the growth stream. In this women are key to grow spontaneously, fulfilling our roles in this church household. Here we go. This is the way. This is the truth. This is the way of Christ and his apostles. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh. This is the life that we've been given. These are the truths we're to be living. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh. Our mission, lives that proclaim the good news of Christ, the truth and the way. Given with glad hearts to sustain the work at home, abroad, around the world. Always ready for those in need. Encourage, admonish, and help in the weak. Oh! This is the way. This is the truth. This is the way of Christ and his apostles. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh. This is the life that we've been given. These are the truths we're to be living. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh. Only God's truth and boldly defending it. Parasia in every one of us. Discipling nations as the Spirit works. Establishing leaders and growing the church. Gathering together as a family. Communion with Christ. We are worshiping. Let me hear. This is the way. This is the truth. This is the way of Christ and his apostles. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh. This is the life that we've been given. These are the truths we're to be living. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh. Sing it again. This is the way. This is the truth. This is the way of Christ and his apostles. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh. This is the life that we've been given. These are the truths we're to be living. This is the way. This is the truth. Oh, oh. Thank you, everybody.
I hit the right last note, so that's what I was going for.